Happy afternoon, everyone. Happy afternoon, I said. Oh, that's a lively crowd. Great. So first of all, thank you, Amitabh ji and team at BHASHINI for organizing this hackathon, and for the students over here. It's a great, and I would say not just students but learners over here. It's a great opportunity for you to contribute to the success of BHASHINI. And today, in this panel, our focus is on Kannada language. So I'll go around the round table and ask each one of you to share your thoughts and perspectives of how far have we reached in terms of AI in languages. We have seen right from the beginning, because there was a need to communicate and language was invented. Since then, the primary language had many variants, and so today we have so many languages, more than 7,000 languages in the world. In India, we have 22 official languages and many other sub-languages as well. Now, in terms of AI, how AI is helping in bridging that language divide that we have. And I would like the focus to be on Kannada. So I'll start with you, David. What are your thoughts? And what do you think? How far have we reached? Are we there yet, or is there some more? So many more miles that we need to cover.
So, part of our work at People+ai, and I'll be fully transparent, I personally don't speak Kannada. I only shifted to Bangalore a year ago after joining People+ai. But having said that, we have been working a lot in improving language technologies, specifically state languages. And we've seen some interesting use cases of it. So what we found was that as you deploy use cases in local languages, while you might have a word error rate typically of 70 to 80%, so 70 to 80% would be accurate, but you'll have a few areas, especially as you go towards the dialects and the changes in accents, word error rates typically go up. But as you continue to deploy the use case, your database gets larger and larger, and you build for edge cases, and you capture certain types of accents. We did a project with IIT Madras, with a research lab over there called AI for Bharat. And one of the things they found interesting was that while you're initially building your ASR model, you have to have a diverse sample. In the sense, you'd probably try to capture 8 different voices, both male, female, different age groups. And if you do that well enough, it'll give you an ASR that is at least lab ready. But then once you then begin to deploy that on the field, it'll still have error rates. But when you consistently commit to deploying a technology, you'll realize that then feeds back into your database and provides you very, very valuable training data. I think some of the perspective that people often take is that they want something to be perfectly ready and then they deploy. And I think if you focus on the use case, you capture data around that, you can then begin to see a significant improvement in a very short period of time. Dr. Rohini was recently just now mentioning that in the 2 years of AI being deployed, it's now grown 40x. So I think even as we begin to launch these use cases, though it might not be at the perfect standard yet, it will very quickly come a long way. So that's what we've seen at People+ai. That's a lot of our work evolves around that as well.
Thank you. Over to you, Anand. Your perspectives?
Yeah, I would definitely, we've been working with the BHASHINI APIs and do see very good success rates both for ASR and for translation. Text-to-speech is still something that is evolving. A couple of things that we as Intel are really focused on is how do you make running of some of these pipelines more sustainable from a power envelope perspective, right? Because when you have to target the power envelope of 15 watts, 30 watts that needs to run on an edge device to 250 watts that needs to run in data center to 600 watts that need to run on a GPU card, how do you preserve the fidelity, accuracy of the model and yet deliver to the compute capabilities that are present across these power envelopes, I think is still something that we need to continue to engineer for use. the other aspect is definitely dialects, right? Because we are focused on 22 languages. Kannada is one of them. But the Kannada that I speak in Dharwad is different from what we speak in Mangalore, is different from what you speak in Mysore to Bangalore to Ballari. So within Karnataka itself, there are at least 12 to 13 prominent dialects that people do speak. So how do you adjust to dialects to kind of democratize this for consumption is something that becomes a problem of creating training data sets and its eventual incorporation in the model, but still balance it with the size of the model that will eventually evolve. Again, goes back to sustainability and running it. So these are some of the things that we need to worry about, that how do you kind of deliver it to multiple compute targets, yet keep it usable to the larger community that is eventually going to use these models. The other thing that I think we should definitely research on is, at the end of the day, we have a service to deliver, let's say a speech-to-speech service. So we deliver that speech-to-speech service with a calling of 3 different models. But can I optimize by fusing some of these so that the end service outcome gets delivered much quickly? I mean, Google is doing some, Meta is doing some research from Seamless M40, but how do you take that research back into the BHASHINI set of models? I think that becomes important as we mature some of this technology. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Deep. Thank you, Anand. Professor, your thoughts?
Thank you. First of all, thanks to all the organizers for having me here. And we are in this discussion on AI, but maybe let me have a start with the human intelligence aspect to start with. And since our stakeholders here are largely students, I want to start by asking a question. How many of you here are doing some sort of reading, although that hobby itself is losing? How many of you, raise of hands, do you read books, read online material? Very few. Raise of hands who are involved in reading. Okay. How many of you read in Kannada? Right. Very, very, very large population. And let me ask you, how many of you have heard of the work Heart Lamp? Heart Lamp. Anybody? Okay. Let me ask one more easier, probably easier question. How many of you have heard of the Booker Prize? The International Booker Prize. I see a few more hands. So I want to start with saying that, you know, a Kannada article, a Kannada book, Heart Lamp, won the International Booker Prize this year, written in Kannada by a person named Banu Mustaq and translated to English by another individual named Deepa, and that won last week the Booker Prize, International Booker Prize, perhaps the first one from India from a translation point of view, right? So this is the sort of local cultural aspects we have in India in Indic languages, which when they see the light of translation, can move steps from being local to being regional to being international, right? So this is building from India for the world sort of scenarios, right? So we want to not just be India-centric, we want to be not just be local-centric, we want to be building for India, but being India being that kind of ecosystem that can show promise for the rest of the world, various ecosystems that can emulate this. So again, I have been part of the BHASHINI program through the National Language Technologies Mission. So what we work in the university as part of a lab, we try to develop speech solutions, try to develop diarization systems, trying to, for example, have this sort of a scenario where we have lots of speakers speaking. We want to understand what, when, who was speaking, etc., and what was the segmentation of the speech and so forth. Quite challenging when we have lots of speech content. And let's say also my part of my life, I spent a couple of years in Google till end of last year, where we were trying to build technologies for Indic languages primarily taking large language models to move them to Indic-specific challenges. So what I can say is like there are lots of linguistic challenges, semantic challenges, models don't understand context, models don't understand nuances. But even before that, there are challenges like data, like evaluation and so forth. So all of you, as students, when you are starting to grow up, put together these sort of career ambitions and so forth, what I would suggest is all these technologies are yet to really mature. All of them require lots of research and innovation. both problem-centric, both model-centric, and even in evaluation and putting them directly into the user's hand. So, it's a real, as many other previous speakers said, a golden era of working on these technologies to, put together your future.
Thank you, Professor. Chandra, up to you. So do you think, have we reached at some stage wherein we can say that translation has become an easier job?
So we'll start with back to 2023, where we have our platform launched. We started with 15,000 per day inferences, meaning these many hits we were getting on daily basis. Now, today is the time when we are per day crossing 1.5 crore inferences per day. That is definitely a time when 2023 and now today. So the question on where we have reached to is, the data is telling most of that. Now coming to Kannada specifically, we have many use cases already available. For example, PM Kisan, it is available in Kannada as a language. We have e-Gram Swaraj, a website which was in English and Hindi only. It is available in Kannada as a language. So many languages that we see in the platform, apart from English, Hindi, Marathi, Telugu, Kannada is one of the highly used inferences out of whatever we are talking about. Coming on the point where we have to cover multiple dialects. We're talking about Dharwad and Bangalore and the multiple dialects. So we are working with state government also, identifying what are the gaps, the data, etc. We're collecting that data and making sure that all the models are available. Now we started with models, few of models available from AI for Bharat is one of our IIT Madras. Now we also have another speech lab within IIT Madras. So we have, as on today, we started with one. We have 3 different models from different institutes, obviously getting upgraded on regular basis, available on the platform. So that is how overall the journey is. And from the platform perspective, we do not want just a platform that we are providing a service, you use it. What we focus on the use cases, and we tend to take the use cases to the closure rather than we are saying we are a platform, you use our services and do it. So that is another main factor that we have reached to, specific to all languages in Kannada.
So would you like to elaborate? I think there's a section called Bhasha Dan and Data Dan there also. So would you like to elaborate a bit on that? How can that be leveraged to focus more on Kannada, let's say, for example?
Right. So Bhashadani is our platform, which is crowdsourced platform where we ask citizens of India to contribute on the different pillars, speech and text. So it's specific to Kannada. We are coming up with a platform where we can have focused drives specific to languages. Specifically, Kannada is with one of them in the company.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So from an enterprise perspective, Deepak, since you work with one of the big techs, what are your thoughts?
So let me ask this question to the audience. How many of you have tried to chat with ChatGPT or other things with other languages? What happens? Have you seen the experience? What happens? Does it give you an answer in that language? Does it do translation, transliteration? What is that it does for you to communicate? And how does it communicate back to you? So this becomes the practicality of languages, because I can train an LLM to do this perfectly. But in reality, nobody speaks Kannada that way. Like, I call a call center. I might speak words in Kannada, but it is interlaced with words in English and other languages. It is the way we speak. That's the natural this one. Second problem, just because I interface in Kannada does not mean I know how to read Kannada at the same speed. So there is that problem of, if you are interfacing only with voice, you have one experience. But if you interface with voice and text together, you have a different experience, because the other system has to understand that you have changed the language. Would you want me to continue in that language, or an English version of that language, or coming back to answer to you in English, but I understand things in Kannada? So that practicality is there. The third problem is, how do you train these LLMs on these nuances? Because to even fine tune these LLMs, you need a data source which exactly is this. I can't give it literature and say, this one. That's not how I speak Kannada either. So Kannada in books is very different from the vocal way I speak Kannada. So it's fundamentally those aspects. And the only way to generate the data is to have more and more people talk and record the data. So production data is the only way you can get more data to fine tune these LLMs towards these dialects. So you're kind of running into a chicken and egg problem, which is you may have a perfect engine, but the engine now has to marry the way, the nuances of how people speak and interact for it to collect the data to learn and adapt. So for us, we use every LLM under the sun, which we can test and play with, but reality is nothing fits the bill exactly for how customer wants it. It may do well with one question. As soon as you go the third or fourth question in this one, it becomes a combination. Because a lot of call a customer service, the first thing they'll ask you is things in English. They'll say Aadhaar card. They may have a Kannada word for it, card, but they will never say that. It's just those words. So everybody is it's a colloquial way of language. Language is not independent of each other. So it's like, how do you make sure the system understands this kind of interactions? How do you make it easy for users to interact with these kinds of things? That's the hardest problem when you take the enterprise scale, because no two users are the same, and they will behave differently. So those will be the challenges.
Thank you. Thank you. So coming to you, Vijay, what are your thoughts? Have we reached there yet?
Yeah. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and to you all as well. So, I mean, let me actually start with a story, right? I mean, my mom, I mean, she is like 70 years right now, and then she studied till 10th and through and through Kannada. Before WhatsApp age, I would say, they were very uncomfortable using any apps. If you saw Facebook or any of those earlier, right, you had to, I mean, English was probably the prime mode of communication there. But in WhatsApp, when voice came out, now she may still not be able to type in the English keyboard, but voice is a very, very powerful mechanism. These days, we just exchange messages over the voice recording, so to say, right? So, and what's the difference, right? Voice essentially gives you ability to speak in your native tongue, right? I mean, she's absolutely not comfortable with English, but then Kannada is her mother tongue, natural language, and she can actually interact with people very, very effectively over voice. So I think the current, AI has kind of really taken us closer to our mother tongue, so to say, right? I mean, or in the language that we are very comfortable in. So without AI, probably everybody would have had to convert themselves into speaking in English. But AI has really taken us closer to our native speak is really how I look at it. And when it comes to Kannada specifically, I would say by far the amount of data sets that we have, in the both in the BHASHINI side or in the AI for Bharat side and in general across India is extremely high. The accuracy and all are also very, very high. One example that I can give is, there is a system, which is, which coexists with the earlier work done by some other people and also with BHASHINI. The Supreme Court of the High Court of Karnataka uses a language translation in a very, very big fashion. So, till date, about 18,000 documents or cases have been translated from Kannada to multiple other languages, and they continue to use systems like that in a very, very big fashion. I have seen a lot of startups coming out of Bangalore who specifically target Kannada-speaking audiences. So, the ability to build an application that caters to Kannada-specific audience, the maturity has grown vastly in the last few years, I would argue, right? So my take is, any of the kids, students in the audience who are trying to build applications, who are trying to do some work, even if it is just an application that you're building, you should really look at using AI. and then try to take it to the hinterlands of India. And that's really where the real revolution is. The Bangalore audience can happily speak in English. Most of the Tier A cities are very, very comfortable speaking in English. But then the large part of untapped audiences or the market is actually lying in the Tier 2, Tier 3 cities of India, and specifically in Karnataka for sure. Right? I mean, if you go 30, 40 kilometers outside of Bangalore, you will really feel the need to speak in Kannada or to articulate your idea in Kannada or even make your applications work in Kannada for sure, right? So the use cases are umpteen. The Swiggis and the Zomatos and the Zeptos are actually trying to go to the Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. How do you build applications using AI to cater to those audiences? And there my take is platforms like BHASHINI. They have rich set of APIs, they have rich set of data sets, they actually have a lot of tools to cater to the local languages. So, to all the student community that's there who are going to participate in the hackathons, my request is please absolutely tap onto those. And at the same time, like what Shailendra said before, you can contribute in multiple other ways as well, right? The dialects, I believe Anand was referring to, the dialects are extremely different. In fact, just a while ago, Amitabh ji asked me to do a bite for Akashvani, and my mother tongue is Kannada, but I come from the Ballari Raichur region, and my Kannada is absolutely incomprehensible to a Bangalore Kannada people. They may think I'm not even speaking in Kannada, which is fine. Because even in Karnataka, the dialects are so diverse and so different, right? So you can absolutely contribute multi-dialect data sets as well. Please reach out to BHASHINI desk to understand how you can contribute. But by far, in this, my take is, Kannada is probably one of the more mature languages when it comes to AI in local languages in India for sure. Because the data sets are available, a lot of people come from Bangalore and hence they are naturally inclined to dig deeper in making sure that the Kannada models work well. However, like David said, are we there? The answer is no. We probably are still scratching the surface. Even when you quoted 70%, I would still look at it as scratching the surface. The last 30% is where the real juice is, and the last 30% is where a lot of innovation has to come, and that's what will make your applications market ready. So we have taken the first initial steps for sure, but then there is a long wide bridge to cross. But I think with platforms like BHASHINI, we are headed in the right direction, absolutely. That's at least my take on this topic.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you for this. So what I hear is the nuances of the language that are the big challenges out there. So now, the zenith of any language is the way human feelings are expressed in a poem. So in your opinion, how far are we in terms of Kannada language to translate a Kannada poem to a non-Kannada speaking person with the same feel? And what it will take? And how BHASHINI plays a pivotal role in that?
I am not familiar with BHASHINI as much, but okay, let me ask this question. Let's go to a very fundamental problem, which is, what is communication through language? It's a way to communicate my thoughts. Now the problem is, have folks played dumb charades? Have you tried to play that with ChatGPT? Switch on your camera and start to show it. Try to see what it guesses. You can actually do that. So if I were to be able to communicate my thoughts without actually speaking a language, the objective of language is done. There is no necessary for technologies to emerge for me because I've already bridged the gap. Language is an efficient form of that technology. The second part of language is, if I speak in Kannada, if somebody is from Karnataka and knows Kannada, there's a sense of belonging, a sense of connection there. It becomes much easier to talk to somebody if they know they speak in this language. It's a natural byproduct of it. So when you talk about poems, I actually installed an LLM which actually does poem translation. That's its job. Now, it could get the translation right, but did it get the essence right? Because the problem is, the essence is not in the language. Essence is the culture which surrounds the language. We would say, in northern Karnataka, you have a lot of gades. The gade is only useful in the context in which it is used, and if you don't know the context or the culture, you will misrepresent that no matter how genius you are in translating language. So to your point about, I think poems are just an outlet of both philosophical and emotional expression. If we are expecting our capabilities, system capabilities to reach that level, you not only have to train them on language, you have to train them on culture. It's lot more difficult for you to place that in one place or the other. And it has to be like multi kind of modal, this one form of data for it to understand all these connections and dots. Because as human, even the same language or the phrase would occur, mean different to me depending on what I know and where I've grown up. So that sensitivity is natural. So it's difficult to translate that into machines, but that's the reality we are talking about if you were going really to preach an essence of a poem to somebody else. Maybe nothing will take our place still for some time.
Thank you. That's reassuring that they are not going to replace us soon. The AI is not going to replace us soon. Thank you. In terms of poem also. And that's a poetic justice, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think one use case that I have seen very frequently and which I think is a big untapped market yet, and I mean a lot of kids in the audience may even try to aspire to be influencers, you know. Today it's so easy to make a meme in English and use AI and make it available in multiple different languages, right? So I don't know whether, I still want the poets to stay true. They should probably write in their native tongue, so to speak. But, AI already is at a level, I would argue, where you can translate memes into any other language. And my take is the influencer marketing today is so focused in English or in one or two primary languages of India as well. But then, if any of you are looking to be influencers, then look at the local language. That's going to create a differentiation automatically from the other existing influencers already, right? So there, I would certainly encourage you guys to actually use AI to, translate your marketing pitches into the local languages for sure. And why not Kannada? Because as I said, Kannada is definitely a language where AI is doing a decently good job. So, please try it out.
Your thoughts, Shailendra?
Coming to the poetry and the other things, so I'll split it into two. So one is text and speech. When it comes to text, definitely would require data. So again, models is what everything is based on the data. The more data that you provide, you build the model. Definitely there would be any problem. If you have a data that understands what is what, we require great annotation and labeling, etc. under the hood. On the speech side of it, right, we have models like prosody, so that understand what is the expression of the voice. You say acha and you say acha. So there are two different ways, the same text being used, but then there are different expressions. So we have models available, and we have speaker diarization, speaker verification. These are the different, which eventually will help overall, we combine it all together. The previous question, we're talking about Kannada as a language, we want to write something. So as on today, Aadhaar, whenever we are updating your Aadhaar address and you want to put it in Kannada and print it out, every other update request that we do today, Bhashini is being used. So it touches every other Indian if we are updating Aadhaar, etc. So in a way, in Kannada, again, the previous question I'm talking about, because I missed to update that, we are touching that level with people and different services with the help of. So there's a thing.
Thank you, Shailendra. Professor, your point of view?
So I guess the first question when you ask a comment like can models translate poems is how do we know when they have done a good job or not, right? So the fundamental question we ask is how do I evaluate them, right? So then you say, okay, maybe a human has to evaluate it. Does it have literary translations of the words right? Does it have the context right? Then we start going to a more higher level questions. Does it have the semantics right, the context of the emotion right, the expression right, or maybe even a very high level comment would be a poetic justice. Has it done that poetic justice when you translate? So when you break it down, let us say, a problem of this nature into various aspects, the question then you ask is, are we even having metrics to evaluate all this? Do we have data to, rightly reward models when they have done the job or not. So all these things are certainly lacking lots of research to make them find nuanced aspects. So problems that partially are solved is, for example, Indian languages have very different word orders. Now models learn it from lots of data that you have to place the right word order when I move from English to Kannada or vice versa. Then some of our or most of our languages are gender based. We use verbs and nouns based on gender, we change. So the models have started to learn them. But then you certainly have things like, for example, idioms, proverbs, colloquial usage of combination of words, phrases, which models tend to struggle. We also borrow a lot from other languages. We implicitly do that. We borrow from Hindi and other Devanagari languages, or as well when you go from, let's say, dialects, as we were talking about, when you move towards borders, towns versus cities to, say, core areas, you have lots of changes according to that. So these aspects, models tend to struggle a lot for understanding the regional variability. So I can just cite one project, for example, that we are involved in with Google. This is called the Project Vani. So essentially, most of the research in languages, if you take, has been linguistic. You go and collect Kannada data, you go collect Telugu, Hindi, etc. So Google, and together with IISc, the partnership was to move away from this thought process. See, when we have India as a country, as an ecosystem, a microcosm of multiple languages, we want to make it region-centric. So the whole project, which started about 2 years ago, called Project Vani, the assumption was we'll go and collect data from every district of the country. So the 770 odd districts of the country have been mapped. Every district gives 200 hours of audio. And since there is no language to ground, the entire data collection is you are given a picture and ask a local in that district to come and describe it. So the local describes in what he or she thinks is the way of choice of language. It could be a mix of two languages, mix of a dialect. So you get completely undocumented languages that come out. People think they are speaking in Hindi, but they may be speaking Bhojpuri and vice versa and so forth. So we collected from every district, and now we are also part of the team of analysis. And BHASHINI, for its sake, also has been partnering with this, promoting this data, putting it through the platforms, and there is significant use cases that can come out once the data reaches the full bloom of it. So you have image, audio describing the image, and some part of the audio is also transcribed with the local annotators. So you have a huge pool of region-centric data available that can be used for research. So again, back to your larger question, I think there's a significant research and development to go to very fine nuances like emotion, like poems, etc.
Thank you. And your take on it?
Yeah, my take on it, I want to pick off from what you said. That is, if I need to write poems or translate poems, there is a lot of cultural nuance to it. And bringing in that cultural nuance really requires significant effort of multimodal capture of those nuances, will require linguistic expertise to make that really happen. So then the question is that, okay, do you write normal poems like the sky is blue, the sun is yellow, etc., or where do you put this effort? Where do you put this modality effort, right? So going back to my Kannada roots, I would say probably we should look at the poetry done by the 15th century poets, all the Dasa Sahitya that we have in Karnataka, and similarly what's there in Maharashtra. There are a lot of these Dasa Sahityas that Das Sahitya happened. That's important. What Kuvempu wrote is important. What some of the really illustrious poets wrote is important. Why we need to be choosy about what we pick is because there was a thinking mind that went into writing what he wrote, okay? And if our linguistic guys are able to mimic that thinking into the labeling of that data, then you're building something valuable. Otherwise, you're just saying, okay, sun is yellow and moon is white, right? I mean, how does that really add any incremental labeling kosh to the overall repository? So that was one take. The second, where you were talking about the ability to read, write in Kannada. For example, I'm from Dharwad, so I speak a dialect. But I studied in Bangalore, so I did only CBSE, so I didn't learn to read, write Kannada. But I read, write Kannada in Devanagari, right? So Devanagari could be that unifying script across a lot of our Indian languages, which becomes another complexity to dealing with in that language discussion that we had prior, right? So the third aspect I want to bring in is that poetry has a lot to do with music, right? Because how you write your poetry, there's a lot of meter to it, right? I mean, there's a lot of meter to the way you place the words. As he said, the way you place the words, there's a metering to it, right? Now that metering has connectivity to our 20 different tals that we have in Carnatic and Hindustani music. It then leads into the raga ecosystem that we have to render different kinds of emotions of sadness and happiness and anger, for example, right? So there is a lot that is there, especially if you, I mean, that simple question that you asked about poetry, there's a lot to it, right? What do you label? How do you bring in the linguistic experts that understand the minds of our great poets? How do you bring in the structured knowledge ecosystem that we have around our music, Hindustani, Carnatic, for both the tal and the voice? So there's a lot here.
Thank you. And David, your thoughts on that?
So part of the challenge that India has not built a lot of general purpose models. We've built, when the challenge is when you take a use case first approach, you're always going after a certain function. This use case has to be serviced. How accurately can we service a use case? And typically those use cases have been accuracy in a certain healthcare transaction or UPI transaction, certain types of educational use cases. And so the challenge becomes is when you take a use case first approach, sometimes you put on the back burner these aspirations of can we have general models that can capture culture to the extent that we want. When you think of a country like India and given the diversity and as well as the availability of digitized data, that's a really tough challenge to solve for. And so I think if we really were to take a stab at it, the best way we'd probably go about it is through, now they have these drag models where through that drag model you can at least retrieve the poem, even though you can't perfectly translate it. And so back in the day when we used to, I was at Vadwani AI and we used to run these edtech platforms. And we do a lot of our translation over Google Translate. And the moment we do that, we'd put it in English and we'd get an output in Hindi and other languages. And the level of formality in that Hindi or the other languages would be so high that even someone who spoke the language would not be able to understand it. So these challenges exist. I feel like we're still a far way off when it comes to poetry, especially because with poetry, many of the words rhyme. If you read it in the language of its original, that the author wrote it in, it would have a certain flow and meaning to it. But if you translate those exact words into English, it really won't mean the same thing anymore. The challenge with AI is I think it can serve certain functions. I don't think it's the best reflection of culture. So if you're worried about which jobs will go away fast, cultural jobs, I have a feeling will stay for a long time. Things, music, art, poetry, things like that will stay around. I don't think AI will replace it very quickly. And so if anyone's looking for professions and wondering what to change into, I would probably stay safe over there. But yeah.
That's reassuring. At least I have another 20 years of jobs left in me so that I can work, so not to worry about that. So,
Wasn't that the objective? Wasn't that the objective? Hello, can you hear me? Just to, wasn't that the objective anyway? For this system to take off some of the mundane work. As Socrates would put it, I would like to spend my day thinking. isn't that the true purpose of my life? If that is the case, let this do my job. Go to my office, do my job. Let me think. Isn't that a true reflection of what I want to do? They can also send an AI to do their jobs.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for this. So, after listening to all of you, what I summarize, thank you. What I would like to summarize. I know. We are just waiting. We are in between your lunch and us, and lunch and you. So, just another 30 odd seconds. Thank you, gentlemen, for all your perspectives and putting some light on AI and language and how far we have reached. So, what I summarize is that we are near to what you call a desired state, what we were 3 years ago. And a lot of credit goes to Bhashini for that. So Amitabh ji, Ajay ji is here, so thank you so much for Bhashini. And now the rest of the gap that is there, that we need to fill in. Now the onus lies on the next coming generation like is sitting in the audience right now, the few generations. So these are the learners, these are the ones who are, I believe, and I choose to believe, I would say, they are going to be the ones who will help us in bridging that gap which we have today in AI and language. So with that, I thank you all for your time. Thank you, Bhashini team. Thank you, Reva University. Thank you, audience. You have been a lively one. Thank you.